If the Clippers can't win when Paul George is awesome, then when can they win? That is the question I've been asking myself over the past couple of weeks as the NBA season has gotten underway. I've tweeted about it a couple of times. I've been watching this very closely since the Clippers have tipped off their season, and it's something that I would be very concerned about if I'm a Clippers fan. What's up, everybody? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe, and let's talk about Paul George. So, the problem with the Clippers this season is they don't have Kawhi Leonard, and they don't know when Kawhi Leonard is going to be back. He is going to be out for the foreseeable future. He tore his ACL in, April, May time, and we know about Kawhi. He has, a history of not only dealing with injuries, but taking a while to come back from them. So, if Kawhi doesn't come back this season, then they are a Paul George team with a bunch of role players, and if they don't have Kawhi, I think the sledding is going to be really tough for them, especially in a really good Western Conference, and Paul George is going to have to carry them into the playoffs and hope that Kawhi returns. But if they're not going to be able to win games before Kawhi comes back, they may not even be in the position to get into the play-in tournament. Because like I said, the Western Conference is really, really good, and so they might just shut it down for the year and take a gap season until Kawhi comes back. And let me show you what I mean by this, okay? So here is Paul George's game log from this season. These are the stats from the 6 games that he has played, that the Clippers have played in so far. And here's his numbers, right? The Clippers are 2-4. They've won twice this year and lost 4 games. They haven't played a ton. That's less than some other teams have played. They've had more rest, but they should have a tougher schedule coming up. So here's the game log here. Their first game, 29 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. That's a loss. Second game, 41 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. That's a loss. The third game, he didn't even play that well. 14 points, shot 6 for 16 from the field. 8 steals in that one. They blew out the Blazers by 30. That was more a result of the Blazers having a really horrible night. The Clippers as a whole were just kind of clicking. So Paul George, didn't have the greatest night, but they did manage to get a win there, so that's something. Against the Cavaliers, this is his one truly bad game of the year. Only 12 points, 10 rebounds, shot 6 for 20, not great, missed all his three-point attempts, and they lose to the Cavaliers there, so not ideal. And then against Portland again, he had 42 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists, and they lose that one by 20 points. And then this most recent game against the OKC Thunder, they did end up winning here, but keep in mind it's against OKC. 32 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists, and they had to come back from, I think, down like 20 to do it, down 19, 20 points, to come back against the worst team in the league, potentially one of the worst teams in league history, to come back and beat the Thunder. Paul George had to almost have a triple-double. So this is my takeaway from the first, couple of games of the season from the Clippers is Paul George has been awesome in, 4 out of the 6 of these games, and the Clippers have won 2 of them. And that's the bottom line here is that they've won 2 games. One of them had to be a big comeback win against OKC. The other one was against Portland, who had an extreme off night. So my question again to you is, if the Clippers cannot win when Paul George is being awesome and putting up these crazy numbers, then what kind of games is this Clippers team going to win? Because think about who you're relying on here. You're asking Reggie Jackson and Eric Bledsoe to be awesome for you. Reggie Jackson, you're saying, hey, dude, we need you to do what you did in the playoffs last year, which is what he did, for a month span of time, playing the best basketball he ever has in his life, showed things that he hasn't been able to do for the past, 3 or 4 years, and he, did that for a month, and they're hoping that he can be that for them for this entire regular season, and I just don't know if he has that in him. They're asking Eric Bledsoe to, play awesome defense and be able to turn back the clock and be the player that he was 5 years ago. You're hoping that Serge Ibaka can come back healthy. You're hoping that Luke Kennard can maybe pull a rabbit out of the hat and become a more consistent player in his 5th or 6th season. You're hoping that maybe Terrence Mann has a breakout year, becomes a most improved player candidate. But all these guys, maybe one of those things happen, but you really need a lot to go right for this team to even really think about sniffing all these big wins that they need to get, right? Because like I said, the Western Conference is tough, and you're not going to be able to just go 500 or a little bit worse than 500 and expect to walk into the playoffs, because that's just not going to happen. This could be a play-in team, and at that point, you lose one game and your season's over, and you don't have Kawhi Leonard, and so what's going to happen at that point, right? This Clippers team needs to, get something going, get something together, and I just don't really have the faith in this roster to be able to, win these big games, which, what we've seen through the first couple of weeks of the season is they have struggled to win. even with Paul George putting up 40 burgers. Like if they cannot win when Paul George is putting up a 40-point triple-double, then what kind of games can they win? You can't rely on Reggie Jackson, Eric Bledsoe, Luke Kennard, all these role players to do all this heavy lifting for you. Like, a lot of them are old, injury prone. Some of them are young guys that haven't proven anything yet. Like, this roster is full of guys who theoretically might have good years, might be good on paper, but in practice, that's asking a lot from the rest of these Clippers role players to be consistent and help carry this team to victory when Paul George is doing everything he can and they're still losing these close games. And this is tough for me because I was high on the Clippers 2 years ago when the first year that they got Paul George and Kawhi. I picked them to win the title because I felt like this was a team that was deep. They were versatile at all these different positions. They were going to be awesome defensively and have these two all-stars that can score and play two-way defense and stuff, right? And things didn't go right for them. In the playoffs, they ended up losing to Denver. They blew that big lead. And then the next year, they get into the postseason. Things are going better for them, and then Kawhi goes down. It's an unfortunate circumstance for a franchise that has dealt with a lot of unfortunate circumstances in their lifetime, but I think ultimately the best thing for this Clippers team to do, it might be just in their best interest to kind of take a gap year, so to speak, where Paul George, he can go out there, he can try to do what he can, but if this team is still struggling to win games with Paul George playing this well, you get to around the trade deadline and things haven't changed and you're looking like maybe a play-in team, maybe a little bit worse than that, I would not be surprised if they just tell Kawhi, hey man, don't worry about rushing back, don't try to get back in time for the playoffs, take all the time you need, take the offseason, take those extra couple of months, come back ready for next year. We're not going to shut down Paul George, but just let him rest a little bit. Tell him to take his foot off the gas pedal and kind of just, take your foot off the gas, play out the rest of the season, and then come back next year fully rested and ready to go with another offseason under their belt to potentially try to improve this roster even further. I know it's a little bit early to be saying that, but that's really my outlook on this Clippers team. Like, if they're going to be a play-in team at best, it's a hard time for me to see this team winning the title this year. Even if Kawhi Leonard does come back, they have to fight their way on the road through a gauntlet of Western Conference teams, fighting the best teams every now and then. Like, what if they come out, as the 7th seed, the 7th or the 8th seed in the Western Conference, and you have to play, the 3 best teams in the conference back to back to back, having to go on the road to beat them with Kawhi Leonard fresh off coming back from an ACL. It just doesn't appear rational to me. So I think this team could be one that we see shut it down a little bit early. Like I said, I know that we're only 6 games into this season, but the trends that I'm seeing on the Clippers are not very promising. It's what I was worried about going into the year, that they were going to struggle to win. And I just feel like this is a team that's ripe for potentially just kind of taking their foot off the gas. It's a veteran team, just kind of, letting it ride out for this year and hopefully coming back in 2022-23 with a healthy roster and a better chance at another title. Another title for Kawhi, that is. This roster has never won a championship. The Clippers have never have. We know that. But yeah, Kawhi can potentially come back and try for another title. This team, it'll be their first. Paul George going for his first. I think they still do have it in them. This is a team that's good. They have a good core. Kawhi and Paul George is a great duo, and they can absolutely win the NBA Finals if they have a good supporting cast around them and they're healthy. But I just don't think that's going to happen until next year. That's my hunch. But yeah, I think that's really all I have. End of rant, end of Clippers rant. Like I said, I know it's early, don't want to jump the gun on this kind of stuff, but I do think it's important to look at the trends of this team, and it goes back to my question at the beginning of the video. If they can't win when Paul George is awesome, then what kind of games are they going to win? And my answer to that is probably not a lot. So with that said, like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Clippers, their season, how do you think it's going to go for them? Would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.